Next time. Or maybe in the next life. Written by Bramblesong. Read by Rashi.
The clock is ticking, you cretins! You have 5 days, so you better get a murder in,
is what Monokuma leaves them all with before fucking off to God knows where, leaving their all too small and terrified group to deal with the aftermath. Kaito could not describe how much he hated bears now. The damage was done, though. He flinches when Kaede jerks wildly out of Tenko's grip to storm out of the dining hall, flushed face glowering all the while. Tenko takes an uncertain step towards the exit, but slows to a stop. Actually, I think it's best I leave her alone for now. Maybe. I don't think she's going to, do anything drastic or something. Kaito exhales nervously and glances towards Shuichi, still frozen in the middle of the cafeteria with a glowing handprint across his cheek, and almost tears glimmering in his eyes. It's usually Kaede who would comfort her at a time like this, but, well, there's a moot point considering she's the one who did the damage in the first place. It's Kokichi this time who discreetly trots up to Shuichi and leans in to whisper something to him. Not that Kokichi is usually the best at comforting people, but Kaito is sure he's capable of it. The attempt brings some type of satisfied feeling into his gut anyways, enough to get him focused back towards Tenko. So, aggression disease, huh? If Kaede were to slap another one of you boys, it would be completely appropriate, Tenko announces. But it isn't something she would normally do, and I won't let her keep doing things she'll regret later. I'll go after her soon. That'd probably be good. He surveys the room to see how everyone is doing. Himiko, Rentaro, Angie, and Kiyobo are gathered around Agonda, who has been leaving people with rude and sometimes aggressive comments all morning, and Korekiyo side-eyes Sumugi, who's been quietly giggling and whispering ominous things to herself throughout all of Monokuma's lecture. Everyone seems to be accounted for, at least. Kaito isn't sure what they should do from here. They'd have to work something out. Kaito is about to suggest that he and Tenko go talk with Kokichi and Shuichi, when Kokichi spins on his heel and heads for the exit, arms lifted casually above his head, as if this isn't an extremely threatening situation in which they need to come up with a plan to keep everyone safe. Kaito curses and follows him into the hallway, ignoring the affronted shout from Tenko as he abruptly leaves the conversation they were having. He ignores the slam of the dining room door as it closes behind him and chases after Kokichi. What the fuck, man? Aren't you supposed to be a leader or something? Why are you just leave?
I wasn't aware we all had to stay in the same room forever now, Momoto-chan.
Kokichi does a heel-face turn to look at Kaito and offers a smile that is tight around the edges.
Unless it's just you who wants to stay in the same room as me. But in that case, sorry, Momoto-chan, I'm not offering any nights in my bedroom right now.
Kaito's stomach flips with the statement, but he ignores it. That's not what I'm asking. This is serious, he growls. What I mean is, we need to do something. And based on the last trial, it seems like you know what's going on. So can you just, I don't know.
You don't know, Momoto-chan? What are you expecting of me if you can't explain what you want?
Kokichi's tone is sickly sweet and dripping with condescension. Find out what's gonna happen. I know you're smart, okay? Kaito forces his fist to unclench and takes a breath. You're smart. In a different way than everyone else here, yeah? You're good at managing people like you manage your clown troupe or whatever.
My evil organization.
Your clown troupe. If we're going to keep the group together right now, we need somebody who's good at it. And I don't think we would have survived the last trial without you, so can you... Kaito looks desperately down at Kokichi, whose expression has melted into something completely blank. It's a while before Kokichi responds.
You know those tears after Mew died were fake, right? I faked them. And you're still dead set on believing they're the truth.
His voice begins to turn incredulous. And don't pretend you know all about me just because you saw my motive video. It sounds like you're trying to replace Maki, and I am nothing like your murder girlfriend. She wasn't my girlfriend, Kaito bites in response, before wondering why was that his response when he was trying to comment on the jab at Maki. Whatever, space case, Kokichi ends bitterly, before adding, voice strained and noticeably frustrated. I don't have all the answers, and I can't predict anything when the motive is supposed to be unpredictable. What should we do now, though? Kaito feels his fists tighten again, and he can't force himself to relax them this time. It's not fair to have a motive where people stop acting like themselves after the mess of the last trial, and the oppressive ceasefire it brought afterwards. Miu and Maki's trial was almost more than they could handle, and they all felt an exhaustion in their bones afterward. And now, having to deal with this? Kokichi curses lowly and mutters, seemingly half to himself and half to Kaito. Monokuma promised a murder by someone who won't be aware of what they're doing by day 5, which implies the mastermind controls who gets sick. So, who do you think that'll be? Kokichi's eyes narrow, but Kaito can see the shred of very well-hidden fear behind them. It's the same look he had at the end of the last trial, when Maki looked at him just before she was taken away by Monokuma. We don't know what everyone's symptoms would be if they get sick, and if they hide them well, then we have a problem, he begins. But I'd watch Akamatsu-chan for now, and maybe Amami-chan. And even you. Kokichi's eyes narrow. You could be hiding a murder under your skin too, Momoto-chan. Kaito bites his tongue, because even though he wants to say he would never, it's an uncomfortable truth and possibility with his motive. Make sure everyone is accounted for, though, and pair up the sick with the healthy people. Ask Amami-chan. He's good at stuff like that. But, you know, Momoto-chan. Kokichi's eyes glint dangerously as he leans in close to whisper to Kaito, the gesture surprisingly intimate, but a warning all the same. It's simultaneously threatening and comforting, and Kaito's breath unconsciously catches just a tiny bit. Watch yourself, because there's only so much I can do to make sure you get out of this intact. With that, Kokichi turns his back to Kaito with an exaggerated flourish and skips down the hall before Kaito can get the instinct to breathe again. He ignores his thoughts about Kokichi and focuses on the message. Anyone here could turn to murder when they didn't know how the despair disease would affect them. Worry twinges in his gut despite himself, and he finds himself wishing he was able to persuade Kokichi to at least stay with him regardless. Reluctantly, Kaito has been wishing they were anywhere else other than here. It's not a new or unique thought, but it's been on his mind a lot more recently since the last trial. If they weren't in this situation, Maki and Miu wouldn't be dead. If they weren't in this situation, Kokichi wouldn't have mourned Miu's death and then found out she was planning to kill him. If they weren't in this situation, he wouldn't be treading lightly around his classmates because he kept insisting Maki wouldn't kill anybody. They were all put into the wrong situation, or perhaps the wrong life. What they are managing now feels like barely living, just scrapping by. As a group, they pushed forward regardless. Rentaro suggested a group system, with the 6th day with 2 healthy people, which clumsily worked for a while. But as more people got sick and the 5th day approached, the more apprehensive Kaito became. Kaede's aggression disease continued to cause her to butt heads with everyone, and eventually Tenko was the only one who could stay with her for an extended length of time. Gonta's bluntness disease off-put even Kokichi at first, who suggested that bluntness maybe wasn't the right diagnosis, considering, quote, telling someone to kill themselves isn't just blunt, it's outright threatening, unquote. Korekio became a sitting duck once he got truth disease and largely stopped talking, which everyone was suspicious of, but it wasn't the biggest issue at the time. Stress pressed down on them all like a heavy fog. Anxiety brought Kaito to crawl out of bed and take his temperature every morning to make sure, no, I'm not sick, I am still myself. Though, if he really was sick, he apparently wouldn't be in a state of mind where he would care to check. Rentaro continued to look more harrowed with each passing day, and Tenko's watch over Kaede was always strained. The worst was when even Kokichi began to withdraw from the group, giving more deadpan responses that hurt, surprisingly, whenever Kaito approached him, and vanishing more often and for longer periods of time. Kaito tried to chase him in those moments too, because games are what they do, and that's what is familiar to the both of them, and maybe that's what Kokichi wanted. But the unfortunate fact of the matter is that the only time Kokichi can be caught in these scenarios is when he wants to be found. He can't tell whether he's happy to confirm that Kokichi wanted to catch him in the past, or disappointed that now he doesn't. What was strange, or hurt more than that, was that Kokichi would let Shuichi catch him. He even sought Shuichi out, but only during times when Kaito wasn't around to join in or give chase. Kaito only knew because he'd been trying to spend time with Shuichi and give him the support that Kaede used to offer him. And each time he does, Shuichi says something about Kokichi. Kokichi said this, or Kokichi did this today, or Kokichi gave me this. Just in passing, but enough for Kaito to know that the boy apparently finds Shuichi of his own volition, just to talk to him. There's this utter bitter feeling that the knowledge dregs out of his heart that he ignores. But he doesn't need that. That's not who he's supposed to be. The 5th day drags by. A few people are missing from breakfast, but there is little they can do about it in the moment, and it wasn't even a new occurrence. Kaito spends the day trying to find as many people as possible so he can keep tabs on them, but ends up getting dragged into whatever the day's mess was. So he spends noontime with Rentaro trying to co-manage Gonta and Korekio, expecting and dreading to hear a body discovery announcement at the time. He doesn't come, and after dinner he stays with Shuichi and Tsumugi, glad that at the very least he can help protect Shuichi in particular if anything were to happen. It never does. The clock in his room reads 11:30 when they ease Tsumugi into entering her dorm, and he says goodnight to Shuichi. Then, he breathes uneasily in his dorm until midnight, when he finally decides they've gotten past Monokuma's ultimatum and allows himself to pass out in his bed. Of course, though, he's startled awake by the monitor coming to life and blaring, "Some bodies have been discovered! Now, half of you, please report to the swimming pool, and the other half to the stairwell that goes up to the 5th floor. Ooh, aren't double murders so exciting?" Kaito chokes on his breath and shoots straight up out of his bed, throwing the covers away and grabbing his jacket. He thought they were free. And 2 people? Who are they? Surely not Shuichi, or Kaede, or Tenko, or Gonta, or Kokichi. He doesn't see anyone on his rush to the school from the dorms. Why wasn't anyone else sleeping? And the trepidation grows with each heavy step into the building, his fast footsteps echoing loudly in the empty space. And eventually, he wildly turns a corner and finds Kokichi facing away from him, standing still in the middle of the hallway as if frozen. Relief fills his veins, because thank goodness for that at least. "Oma!" Kaito gets close enough to be able to nudge Kokichi before he reacts, tilting his head towards him stiffly, expression inscrutable. "Mota-chan." Kokichi's voice wavers ever so slightly. What's wrong? He wants to ask. But that's all Kaito gets. "You heard the body discovery announcement then? Which room are you going to?" Kokichi's eyes flick up to meet his, and perhaps it's the way his eyes get a little wider, or how his fists tighten to grasp further at his clothes. But Kaito gets the feeling that something is terribly wrong, in a way that he isn't even aware of. "Not sure yet, but I'll follow you. It's not hard to walk into a murder scene by yourself, don't you know, Momoto-chan?" Kokichi's facade should be perfect, but Kaito can't unsee the same crease in his forehead from when they found Miu's body, or unhear the same faux, unbothered tone of voice when Kaede came to the conclusion that Miu was planning to kill Kokichi before she was murdered. It smooths over, and then Kokichi's smile is the same condescending smile he always has, even though Kaito knows this one is an act. "Lead the way, peasant." What's wrong is what he wants to ask. What's wrong? He stamps those feelings down and remembers where they are and what's happening. They don't go away, though, even as they discover Kaede and Korekio's bodies, and the world turns upside down once again. I'm going to go over everything one more time, proving that Angie is the only one who could have murdered Kaede, and to show that it must have happened before Korekio was murdered by Gonta. The courtroom quiets down, out of respect for their lost classmates, but maybe also out of fear of what's to come next. Gonta is still sobbing behind his podium, exactly as he'd been ever since Shuichi came to the conclusion that he is the only one who could have murdered Korekio. Under the influence of the despair disease, yes. It doesn't seem like anyone is blaming Gonta himself for the murder, but that knowledge isn't doing Gonta any good, even with Kokichi being uncharacteristically kind and explaining why it isn't his fault in a hushed voice. The tears don't stop. The trial must go on, though. Shuichi visibly steadies himself, and Kaito reaches out to clap him on the shoulder. Kaede and Korekio were both murdered within a short period of time last night, but by different people. Kaede was found in the stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors, and Korekio in the swimming pool. Alibis for this case are difficult, because all the clocks have displayed multiple wrong times for an undisclosed amount of time. But we know that Kaito, Rentaro, and Himiko could not have pulled off either murder, because Himiko and Rentaro were together the whole time, and Kaito was in his dorm when everything took place. Gonta has had the bluntness disease for a while, and this sick Gonta has often expressed aggressive and murderous feelings towards many members of the group. Angie knew this, of course, and also knew something about Korekio, something he said because of the truth disease that would make Gonta want to kill him. So, she took advantage of it. The group takes a moment to look at Angie, whose normal sunshine smile is plastic and hollow. She told Korekio to meet her by the pool to spend time together, but in reality, she was planting him in a place where he would be unable to escape Gonta. Then, during the time she met with him, Tenko, and Kaede on the 3rd floor, she manipulated the sick Gonta into wanting to kill Korekio, and gave him the opportunity by saying where he would be. This was Angie's original plan, a plan that would have killed Korekio and Gonta for no reason at all. But something unexpected happened. Tsumugi, who was supposed to be being watched by Rantaro and Hibiko in the Ultimate Magician's lab, appeared with one of the knives from Maki's old lab. Chaos erupted immediately, and all three of the sick people ran off. Tenko, overwhelmed, told Angie they should split up to find them and went after Gonta, who she deemed the biggest threat. In that moment, Angie saw another chance she didn't plan for, a chance to pull off a murder herself, and, with luck, not be caught. She found the knife that Tsumugi brought and killed Kaede, the first of the two that she came across in the stairwell. In many respects, a murder this simple would have been the perfect murder, if not for what Angie herself revealed.
I didn't reveal anything, Shuichi. God is saying that you're making things up.
Angie's smile remains, but her eyes are dark. You're the only person in this trial who hasn't been sympathetic towards Korekio's murder, and based off of Tenko's account of what the sick Gonta said before he ran off, we know that somebody told him that Korekio was dangerous. And we know, Shuichi continued, growing more confident as he goes, Korekio was murdered before Kaede because of how fresh the blood on the knife was, and the time Tenko knows she was spending chasing Gonta. You're the only one who's been acting more strangely than usual, Angie. Shuichi ends his statement by pointing at Angie. The silence afterwards rings through the courtroom. Angie rocks back and forth on her feet, smile finally eclipsing, and Tenko is the first to speak, her voice small.
Why did you plan more murders, Angie? We know you weren't sick.
Angie cocks her head towards Tenko, a manic smile, a new one that Kaito has never seen on her face before, steadily grows. It off-puts even Tenko, who reflexively takes a step backwards when Angie leans forward over her podium to look Tenko in the eyes.
Korekio was a very dangerous individual. I think I actually did Tenko the biggest favor out of everyone by getting him before he got us. Unless Tenko wanted to be the one to kill him herself. He did admit to killing lots of girls to me, and it seems like a graver sin in Tenko's eyes, yes?
The group gasps at Angie, and Tenko's eyes widen like a deer in the headlights. Monokuma chooses that moment to intervene.
It seems like discussion has come to an end, and now it's time to move to voting. Wait!
Himiko speaks for the first time in a while, voice streaked with fear and desperation over what was supposed to happen next.
We never finished talking about the trap in the Ultimate Detectives Lab. Shouldn't we figure that out too?
Well, Shuichi reaches up to fidget with his bangs, his hat discarded out of respect for Kaede. Yes, maybe. We were at an impasse with that earlier, though, Rantaro states. Nothing has changed since then. Rantaro is right. Almost anyone could have done it. We can't narrow it down without more information. Somebody tried to kill Shuichi specifically, though. Kibo had the heart to point out how dire the situation could have been. The fact that they had very nearly had a triple murder on their hands. Kaito remembers how complicated the room had looked. How once the door was opened safely, Kokichi and Shuichi had pointed out the ways the rope and bookshelves would all move to shoot an arrow into the victim's shoulder, and then drop lethal poison onto them. Kaito had never seen Shuichi look so shaken, or Kokichi look so horrified. I think we should try and figure that out one more time. Monokuma bangs his gavel and shouts,
You get 5 minutes. I'm just itching to get to voting time and the execution.
Okay, let's start with this. Shuichi takes out a slip of paper that Kaito knows reads, Let's meet at 11 a.m. tonight in the detective's lab. Something has to be done. I found it in the dining hall sometime midday and decided to, go look later. But I found Kaede's body instead, and Kokichi and Kaito saved me from walking into the trapped room afterwards, so I got very lucky, is the unspoken end to that statement. Really, it was Kokichi who saved him, being paranoid enough to doubt the placement of the note and the slight jam of the door, and knowledgeable enough to use a small mirror to see into the room so he could disengage the trap and let them open the door safely. All Kokichi, who right now was taking a break from comforting Gonta and staring at Shuichi, looking vaguely frustrated and contemptful, of all things. Rentaro picks up the rest of Shuichi's explanation. Whoever planted the note must also be the person who changed the times on the clocks and disabled the feature on the monopads, but we can't prove that anyone here is capable of that. He says the tail end of it stiffly. He definitely has his own ideas about who to suspect, but ultimately, he's right. They have no way of proving it.
I can tell you one thing, Shuichi,
Kokichi murmurs darkly, his expression turning poisonous, more intense.
Whoever planned this murder
was smart enough to not only create the trap, plant the node, and change some of the clocks so that they could control who was where and when, but also target you, of all people. And what would these trials look like without Shuichi to point things out? So, Kokichi leans over Gonta's podium, face blank and tone threatening, but also grim in a way that stands out from his normal playful outlook. You'd better watch your back, Mr. Ultimate Detective, because someone in this group got smart. Kaito wants to point out that they would still have Kokichi to help solve the mysteries, but watches Shuichi's face pale noticeably and decides that's enough for now. Hey now, give it a rest, Oma. It's been a long day. What if it was actually, Kaito racks his brain for an alternate explanation. What if... couldn't this person have been sick? They wouldn't have any memory of it then, and it wouldn't be their fault.
Sick, huh?
Kokichi cocks his head challengingly towards Kaito.
You think someone was able to hide being sick that day? What kind of disease would they have had, Momoto-chan?
Kaito rises to match the fight in Kokichi's voice, eager to prove his point. That doesn't matter. What does is that it isn't their fault, just like how it's not Gonta's fault that this happened to him. Whoever it is, they won't do it again.
We can't even confirm it was someone who was sick.
Kokichi scoffs.
Don't pretend you know what you're talking about.
That's a good idea, though. They could have been sick, Shuichi chimes in, his previously nervous expression looking a bit relieved. Someone who was sick and hid it well, or someone who was only sick for a short period of time. If I may, Rentaro interrupts, and Kaito takes in his stormy demeanor that has only gotten more pronounced this whole trial. You all seem too eager to agree this person was sick because it's more convenient. It's a very real possibility that this was a healthy person trying to complete a murder in the chaos of the motive, and in that case, they could very easily try it again. Rentaro punctuates his statement by staring right at Kokichi as he ends. Kokichi raises an eyebrow in response, some type of silent communication going on between them. Shuichi seems to notice the interaction too, his eyes flicking between the two of them questioningly. Kokichi sticks his tongue out at Rentaro, but Kaito can't tell whether it's sour or meant to be teasing.
Amami-chan is right. There's a dangerous person here now. And even if they were sick, they could still try and pull off another murder.
They wouldn't, though, Kaito cries. Why can't they understand? There's no reason for a sick person to plan another murder. Monokuma had to give them the despair disease to get them to try. That wouldn't have happened if they wanted to plan a murder themselves. Kokichi's expression flares, and he bites back with more energy than seems necessary.
How do you know they won't realize what they can do and try to do it again, huh? There's someone who knows they can pull off a perfect murder now. It's idiotic to not consider the possibility of them trying again.
They won't! Kaito slams his fist down on the podium and lets the fire in Kokichi's eyes fuel his own speech. Monokuma had to give them an illness to get them to murder. It seems like a last resort option to me. This whole motive happened because nobody in our group was planning a murder, so Monokuma had to play dirty to get that to happen. Kaito locks eyes with Kokichi once he says his bit, and Kokichi seems to pause at that moment. His expression fades into a blank look as he looks at Kaito. Just looks at him, and it feels meaningful for some reason. A moment of tension, like there's something hovering between them, just waiting for Kokichi to let it go. But Kaito can't figure out why. Angie planned a murder, though, Rentaro notes, presenting it like an offhanded comment, but his smile comes across as too smug for it to be genuine. So there's at least one healthy person here who was capable of murder, and if there's one, there can be more. That happened after... He's interrupted by the sound of a gavel ringing through the courtroom.
And that's long enough. Geez, even I know this conversation is going to go in circles if I won't intervene. So now, it's voting time!
Himiko starts wailing, and Gonta's sobs become noticeably louder, despite Kokichi redirecting his attention back towards him. Kaito bites his tongue and glares at Rentaro before swallowing down the lump in his throat in dreadful anticipation of what is next. It's sunrise once they all walk out of the elevator back into the courtyard, numb and much more fearful for the future than they had felt in the prior trials. No more Angie either. Shuichi emerges with his arms wrapped around himself, an attempt at personal comfort after the horror they had all just witnessed. He glances at the group forlornly. In the past, Kaede was the one who would guide him somewhere else, comfort him, grieve with him. But she isn't here anymore, and based off the past few days, Kaito is expecting Kokichi to be the one to approach him but with one final word to Gonta, Kokichi ignores Shuichi and gently sweeps right by him, walking away from the group before anyone can muster the heart to follow. Shuichi eyes him as he leaves too, but doesn't say anything. That Kaito thought Kokichi liked Shuichi, or something like that. That can't be how this ends, though. If Kokichi isn't going to help Shuichi get through this, then he will. Even though he kind of wishes he could go after Kokichi instead. Still, though, Kaito understands enough to know that Kokichi can take care of himself if he needs to. He clasps Shuichi on the shoulder and walks him back to the dorms, checking in and making sure to have dinner with him later after they've all slept for a while. The others go to their dorms to sleep too, quietly filtering in as he talks to Shuichi. But once Shuichi heads off to sleep, he realizes that he saw everyone enter their dorm, except Kokichi. And Kokichi needs to sleep too. Was he even heading towards the dorms earlier? Probably not. He debates whether he should just go to sleep himself, before thinking, fuck it, and exits the building, a surprisingly easy decision. Where would Kokichi be? He searches all the obvious places first. The AV room, dining hall, gym, library. Then he starts checking every room. He finds himself in front of the Ultimate Detective's lab eventually, one of the last places he's looking, which was a choice. The door is closed and unassuming, just as it was before he, Shuichi, and Kokichi stood in front of it after finding Kaede's body. He has a harder time reaching out to open it than before, the memory of the deadly Rube Goldberg machine still fresh in his memory. Eventually, he musters up his strength to gently push the door open, and is met with a sharp gasp and a pillow to the face for his troubles. The pillow falls to the ground, and there's Kokichi standing next to the couch, expression startled, and for perhaps the first time Kaito has ever seen, a little vulnerable. Kokichi gathers himself quickly, though, and scowls. Did you grow up in a barn, Mamoto-chan? Have you ever heard of knocking? The tone is bitter, but also weary and more flat than usual. Kokichi never sounds that half-hearted, at least not in a way that Kaito notices. Shouldn't you go to sleep like everyone else? It's been a long day. But you're not asleep, are you? Can you go somewhere else? I don't feel like playing right now. Kokichi's voice keeps the same drained tone as before, which doesn't make sense, because Kokichi usually adapts much more quickly than,
Ooh, there's my little homewrecker!
Kaito flinches, and Kokichi jumps again when Monokuma drops in with a crash from the ceiling right between them, landing face down and recovering far too quickly.
Homewrecker? Homewrecker? No, that's not the right word. What word do I mean?
Fuck off, Monokuma. It's too late for this shit. Can you and Mamoto-chan both leave?
Oh, I remember the word I wanted. Game wrecker. My little game wrecker. Well...
Monokuma cuts them both off gleefully, but his voice lowers, and his red eye begins to glow in the dark of the room with the next statement.
It's not like you got the opportunity to really be either, you know?
Kokichi grimaces, but Kaito isn't sure what Monokuma is referring to.
You know what I'm here for because you're smart. You know, that's what I love about you. You're smart, and that makes the game a whole lot more interesting. Not smart enough, though.
Monokuma holds out a stubby paw, the gesture entirely condescending.
Give me the machine. You know the one.
They're still for a moment, but eventually Kokichi's expression falls. He reaches into his pocket to pull out a small metal box the size of a pencil sharpener to drop down to Monokuma, a look of defeat so foreign on his face that Kaito is struck speechless. Whatever. It's useless now anyways.
Boo-boo-boo-boo-boo. That's another problem solved.
Monokuma dances around in a circle holding the metal box that Kaito recognizes above his head. But the dance is so obnoxious and insensitive to the mood of the room that Kaito has to press his feet into the ground to prevent himself from punting him towards the wall.
Oh, and one last thing, because I bet you're wondering.
Monokuma stops and turns to Kokichi.
Your disease. What a strange set of symptoms, right? I call it yandere disease. You know the tropes.
Monokuma mimes, swooning as the pieces start falling into place for Kaito.
Such a shame you ran out of time. Maybe think about trying it again soon. Boo-boo-boo-boo-boo-boo. Bye now.
Monokuma vanishes, and Kaito turns to Kokichi and blurts out, You were sick? And you had one of those machines that Mew made to hack into devices, which were apparently all destroyed, but you had one? So you could have messed with the clocks. Kaito stops his flow of mind question when Kokichi's expression doesn't bounce back like it usually does, and instead shrinks into itself, the look obviously a broken mask trying to cover up tears. Kaito's seen the expression on Shuichi's face, but it looks decidedly worse on Kokichi's. I tried to kill Shuichi. Is that what you're trying to get to? What do you want from me? Kaito sees the way Kokichi collects himself. He straightens a bit, lets some of the tears leak out, and his expression becomes more exaggerated. But it still seems far too real for Kaito to not take him seriously. Is Mamoto-chan going to duel me to the death for threatening Saihara-chan's life? Is that why you haven't left yet? The last statement has some push to it, because of course Kokichi wants him to leave. But, are you okay? Is what he responds with instead, the question he's been wanting to ask all day. He says it, and immediately knows it's a dumb statement, because the meaning is unclear on his end, and Kokichi could respond to it in a million different ways that would all deflect it anyways. But instead, Kokichi slumps back down and forces out a, "Can you leave?" That sounds far too small for Kaito's liking, and no, there must be more than a couple things that aren't okay for Kokichi to sound like that. I don't think— Get out! Kokichi's shoulders rise up in anger, and he hurls another pillow at Kaito, and then another, and then the final one. Each of the attempts almost laughable, if not for how foreign the action felt from Kokichi of all people. You don't think anything, Kaito! You don't have the right to think you know anything about me, or pick apart, or even be here right now because you're an idiot and... Kokichi pauses and draws in a shuddering breath. Kaito sees how he's shaking too and realizes, oh, that's panic. He's panicking. He steps forward with the intent to do something, whether to comfort or guide him to the couch or get him to sit on the ground. But when he gets close enough to reach out, Kokichi breathes a hollow, "Don't touch me." That sounds far too delicate for Kaito to think that's right to ignore him. Worry curls uncomfortably in his gut, but he puts his arm down and spends a few slow minutes waiting for Kokichi to put himself back together. He watches the irregular, ragged breaths slowly begin to find a pattern, and the way he places his full sleeves over his eyes, presumably to catch tears. Not once does he sniffle, though. There's no sound other than the slowly evening breaths and the steady ticking clock in the room. Eventually, it quiets down to just the clock, though, and the concern that Kaito filled the room up with before turns into a question, laced with tension. I want an explanation, he realizes. He wants to know what's happening, why it's a big enough deal to get Kokichi to react like this, and whether he can do anything to help. They're still, though. Everything seems to freeze in anticipation of what's next. The next action that will catapult them into the next part of the chase. Kaito feels words at the tip of his tongue, another question or remark that will no doubt be thrown back at him tenfold. But there's something nearly imperceptible that he gets from Kokichi, so that when the other boy darts for the exit, Kaito is able to lunge to his side and cut his path off so abruptly that Kokichi almost flips over his arm, and they both canter into the table. Trapped now, Kokichi struggles and whines in a voice that's more nasal than usual. "But I don't want to spend time with Stinky Mamoto-chan! Let me go!" Kaito growls and tightens his hold, some type of anxiety curling in his gut. "You're acting weird, though, because of whatever, something that isn't your fault. So why don't you just stay here and talk about it like— Hypocrite! Yeah, but it's not your fault. You know that, right? If you feel bad, you should just talk about it instead of acting differently and trying to pull away." "You're sure mentioning me acting differently a lot for a person who didn't notice me running around for a few days." Kokichi fires back, his sneer devastatingly well put together for someone who still sounds like they've been crying. "Well, I know it's you now." Kokichi takes a moment to stomp on Kaito's foot, and he yelps but takes care to pull Kokichi up off the ground and hold him at arm's length like a feral cat. "What the fuck, man?" Kokichi bares his teeth in a way that's entirely condescending. "Fuck off! This isn't about me. It's about you blaming yourself for things you can't control. You're talking out of your ass. You don't even believe what you're trying to lecture me on, Mamoto-chan. So just be the bigger man and let me run away." He accentuates the statement with a kick to Kaito's shin. "Like you always do." Kaito grits his teeth and bares the throbbing in his foot and shin. He needs to do this. "So, you get sick with the yandere disease, right? And the sick you tried to kill Shuichi, but it failed. So I don't see what the big deal is." Kokichi stops struggling and looks him dead in the eyes. "Mamoto-chan is missing too much to ever understand. I don't see how you think this'll work. Then explain it, goddammit! Kokichi's expression stays unnervingly neutral. Kaito's on his own here. Shit, man. This is what Shuichi and Kaede were good at. Still, though, what he just learned. Kokichi had the despair disease for the past few days and tried to kill Shuichi because of it. And, loath as he is to listen to him, Monokuma did call Kokichi a home wrecker, or a game wrecker. So they have to be connected, right? Kaito latches onto something and runs with it. So, the Sikyu is the one who made the trap in the room and mixed all the clocks up. He begins carefully. And Monokuma wanted Miu's machine, so it must have been important, yeah? That's what you're going to focus on? You're not going to find Shuichi right now and tell him I'm the one who tried to shoot an arrow into his arm and drop poison on him? Don't you think he'd be more interested in my stupid box? Kokichi fumes, his gaze burning holes in Kaito's head. And don't give me that I know you won't do it again bullshit. I know I'm capable of getting away with it now. I could plan another perfect murder and make everyone think you did it. Earlier in the game, the threat, paired with the chillingly maniacal expression and tone, would have made Kaito's blood run cold. But even after seeing the proof of Kokichi's intelligence firsthand, it doesn't have the same effect. I don't think you will. So, yeah, I think the box is more important. How did you still have one? The dark look flickers, and then fades, until Kokichi is just scowling at him. But his lip wobbles, as if he can't figure out whether he wants to play the anger card or the sadness card. I stole it from Miu, duh. You couldn't even figure that out? Fine. Better question. Why was it that important? Struck by a moment of inspiration, Kaito realizes something and pushes forward, hope lighting up in his heart. Monokuma called you a game wrecker. So did it have to do with that? Did you want the machine to end the game? Kokichi tenses up, and Kaito revels in the thrill of that victory for a moment before the other boy snaps. If you don't let me down right now, I'll kick you again. Kaito eyes him warily, but eventually lowers him back to the ground, but maintains a sturdy but not painful grip on his wrists. Fuck you. If you're going to forcibly keep me here, at least hold my hand so we can pretend it's consensual. His hand instead, then. Kokichi's eyes flick down to their linked hands once Kaito complies, and his eyes widen almost curiously. Perhaps he wasn't expecting that. Aww, Kokichi coos, swinging their hands back and forth. All I had to do to get a boy was try to kill the one from before. Who'd have thunk, Mamoto-chan? Kaito's heart jumps, and he thinks, for fuck's sake, this cannot happen now. He pushes on through and prompts, You wanted to end the game, right? Hope flashes straight up his chest, because this was great. This was wonderful if Kokichi wanted to end the killing game, because Kokichi was sharp and good at mysteries, and always seemed to know what was going on, so he'd certainly have a plan or idea, just like he did for the despair disease and the trial before. The sprout withers in his chest, though, when Kokichi replies dourly, Can't do much now that the machine is used up, can I? He almost looks sad. He looks upset, and Kaito thinks Kokichi has been surprisingly open this whole time, hasn't he? That doesn't mean he's giving up, right? Well, we can come up with something else then. Who is this we, Mamoto-chan? I wasn't aware I was letting you into my planning committee. Shut up for a second. If you really want to end the killing game, or maybe Shuichi and I, can help. There's got to be something we can do, even if you don't want to share whatever plans you have. You can't give up because of this. Kokichi stops swinging their hands and turns his head towards Kaito, presenting the most plastic, placating smile that Kaito has ever seen in his life. My game of hide-and-seek ended, Mamoto-chan. Monokuma caught me. What do you expect me to do now that I'm a marked man? The gears turn in Kaito's head. Marked man, he says slowly. You think murderers, or the mastermind, are going to target you now? One of those is old news, Mamoto-chan. You know, with Miu. It's the mastermind one that's new now. You think this motive was meant to target you, then? Don't you think so? Kokichi's tone was flippant, but there it is again, the barely noticeable trembling in his hands and the soft layer of fear in his expression. And maybe Kokichi was right. The motive did seem to set Kokichi's plans back a few stages. Monokuma even claimed to gloat about it. He got a personalized disease, too. One that might have shaken him up a bit if how he treated Shuichi afterwards was any indication. He also could have ended up getting executed, Kaito realized with horror. A lot of this motive targeted Kokichi specifically, almost like it was Kokichi's plastic smile screams the same idea. A warning. Oh, Kaito thinks.
Be careful, Kaito,
Kokichi whispers, soft, maybe even concerned. I'd rather you live, and sticking with me like this isn't in your best interests.
Can you trust me to take care of myself, Momoto-chan?
Kokichi looks up at him plaintively, eyes wide and bright and beautiful. Shut up, that's not a thought for now. And Kaito's heart melts for that expression, just a little bit. He doesn't want to just leave it at that, though. It's not fair that Kokichi got singled out by the mastermind, and it's not fair that he lost what he needed to help him end the killing game, and it's not fair that they're even here in the first place. He can't continue to do nothing. He must have unconsciously tightened his grip on Kokichi's hand, because the other boy's expression contorts into a grimace, and he says,
Momoto-chan, you're hurting me.
Sorry, Kaito eases up on his grip and consciously makes himself meet Kokichi's eyes again. A beat passes, and seamlessly, Kokichi closes the gap between them and stands taller, so his eyes are inches from Kaito's.
You just what, Momoto-chan?
Kaito knows what's supposed to happen here. He's supposed to get angry, push Kokichi away, say, give a guy some space, or something like that. Because this is just teasing, right? This is their routine. They get on each other's nerves. It's what they're familiar with. And it's what they've been doing every single time. But maybe it's the delicate, beautiful look that Kokichi gave him before, or the fact that Kokichi was acting a bit more open, or the completely new feeling of Kokichi's whispered breath falling oh so close to his face. But this time, a startlingly fluorescent and embarrassing flush rises up from the bottom of his neck straight to his face, which intensifies a moment later when Kokichi's eyes widen in recognition. Kaito drops Kokichi's hand like it's burning coal and turns away. He can leave. He can always leave. This is mortifying. He's leaving. This is not what was supposed to happen. What in the world?
Wait!
This time, it's Kokichi who grabs his wrist, grip firm and tone slightly frantic. Kaito could rip his arm out of Kokichi's grip. He could, but the new tone makes him hesitate. So instead, he hides his face in the crook of his arm and growls out a shaky, "Fuck off, man," that's muffled by his coat.
I'm sorry. That was...
Kokichi sounds hesitant, which is a new tone for him. It prompts Kaito to let one eye peek out from under his arm so he can see Kokichi's tentative expression as he finishes the statement.
That was a last-ditch effort for you to let me go. I didn't expect it to, actually work. I thought Momoto-chan just had a tiny crush.
Kaito chokes on his spit for a moment.
Or maybe he was faking it, but...
Kokichi tilts his head and lifts his free hand up to his own cheek and holds it there, as if trying to imagine what Kaito feels like.
It's impossible to fake this.
Kokichi looks a mix of concerned and openly intrigued, which isn't an expression Kaito knows how to respond to. But it's at least better than scorn. It's not important, Kaito mumbles, holding the cold back of his hand against his cheek, and then shaking his head. Reset. Back to the matter at hand. Are you feeling better now? Kokichi's eyes refocus, and he removes his hand from his cheek in favor of rocking back and forth on his heels. He doesn't say anything for a while, but eventually he mutters, half to himself,
Better, huh? The mastermind wouldn't fall for little old me at this point, so...
Did you think I was the mastermind? Kokichi stills.
No, he decides. But anyone could be the mastermind. You're just at the bottom of the list now. The least likely out of everybody to stab us all in the back.
The cynicalness stings a little bit, but that doesn't seem like a completely unbiased feeling, so he swallows it down. Kokichi notes his silence by cocking his head and adopting the same curious look as before. It's a unique look, very much different from the teasing looks of annoyance or fake sadness that he's used to receiving from Kokichi. Kaito meets his eyes to try and catch the gears turning in his head, those racing, intelligent thoughts that he knows he hides with a childish demeanor. Because of course Kokichi will be taking this new information and deciding how to use it to his advantage, right? But right now, the look Kokichi has is still open, despite how vulnerable Kaito himself has felt, his eyes bright and pristine like a cloudless day. Pretty. He doesn't squash the thought this time. Kokichi stares at him for a moment longer and clicks his tongue.
And I thought I understood Momoto-chan through and through. But even I didn't know he's a sadist.
Kaito splutters in confusion. What? I'm not. Why would you say that?
Well,
Kokichi lets go of Kaito's wrist, apparently satisfied that he's here to stay, and frames his face with his hands in a way that highlights his soft features. You don't like me because I'm nice, do you? Because I'm not. So why does Momoto-chan like me, huh? Is he secretly fond of being degraded and kicked in the shin? Kaito's first instinct is to bite back, because he is most certainly not a sadist, and his shin still hurts like a bitch. But he doesn't know if he's imagining the real wonder in Kokichi's expression, something inquisitive that could lead to vulnerability. That's a bit of a difficult answer for him to say out loud, though, isn't it? Fuck that. Kaito isn't a coward. He can shed some blood after he saw Kokichi bleed for minutes on end because of Monokuma. No, my shin and foot still fucking hurt, so thanks for that. But Kaito steels himself and plows ahead, because of course he knows. He just never admitted it. You're smart, okay? Scary smart. I have no idea how your thought process works smart. And you're fun, not boring. Like, you make everything more exciting when you're around. And sure, you're not really nice all the time like you said, but I think you're a good person deep down. You're also, like, I don't know, cute? Sometimes? When you're not telling Rantaro a horror story at 1 a.m. Like, there was this one time... Kokichi is staring at him. There was this one time you were chasing Sumugi around with some type of bug from Gonta's lab, and I don't know why you ran into the tall grass, but all Shuichi and I could see and hear was the very top of your head moving around, and you laughing about how frantic she seemed, and I don't know, I guess at the time I just thought it was... He notices the gentle flush rising up to Kokichi's cheeks and pauses, but finishes his thought nonetheless. Cute. Stop, Kokichi commands, tone firm, but with an underlying waver. You're ridiculous. That's dumb. There are better people to like for those reasons than me. Maybe he's right, but the light dusting of pink across Kokichi's cheeks and on his nose creates a funny feeling high in his chest regardless, and he grins wildly. Kokichi scowls, a surprisingly silly look alongside the blush, and responds, Go spend some time with Shuichi or Rentaro, and get back to me, because that's a poor decision on your part. Didn't I just tell you to leave me alone? Hearing about Shuichi startles Kaito back into reality, and he hesitates before the cold look Kokichi is giving him forces the question out. Did you like Shuichi? Kokichi looks at him warily, the silence stretching uncomfortably long to the point that Kaito thinks he's going to bolt again. It doesn't happen, though, because instead, Kokichi shifts his eye contact away from Kaito and sighs. Yeah. Kaito's heart sinks and he looks away. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. He knew that. He was hoping, though. He thought with the way that Kokichi reacted. It's fine, though. Not a big deal. He'll survive. He probably shouldn't have said anything at all, though. A bit, I mean, Kokichi murmurs. Less than Monokuma made it out to be. It was more like, I could have liked him, I guess. But I never would have. He trails off and lightly fidgets with his sleeve, and Kaito realizes Kokichi is dealing with a lot right now. Isn't he? First being betrayed by Mew, then a despair disease, maybe liking Shuichi, almost killing Shuichi, being targeted by the mastermind, losing the clock-stopping device, being mocked by Monokuma. Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. You, want to go back to the dorms and regroup or something? It's been a long night, and is being in here actually doing you any good? Kokichi's eyes flick up to his, and his nose wrinkles distastefully before his expression smooths out into something giddy. No, I'm fine, he drawls playfully. I think you're overstepping how much sleep supreme leaders of the world actually need. I functioned well on less before, which is to say, I don't need to sleep. Ever. I never sleep. The light-hearted attempt at bickering is just as relieving as it is annoying, and makes Kaito laugh. Okay. But really, is being here doing any good? Well, no, actually, because the point was to not see anybody, and you still came all the way up here to this dumb room. Hey! Kokichi sticks his tongue out at him in a teasing manner. Well, I suppose I can forgive you. The main point was to avoid Amami-chan and Saharu-chan, so if either of them were going to stalk me out, they would have opened the door by now. So I'd say I'm in the clear. Again with Rantaro and Shuichi. Strange. I understand you not wanting to see Shuichi right now, Kaito begins, hoping he doesn't sound too confused. But why Rantaro? Kokichi rolls his eyes and responds incredulously.
Are you daft, Momoto-chan? I saw you notice Tamami-chan making eyes at me at the end of the trial. He knows I'm the one who set up the trap. He just thinks I've done it voluntarily, which is going to be a problem. That makes Kaito perk up, because that's a problem he can do something about, and the concept of doing something helpful for Kokichi is more alluring than he'd like to admit. That's not true, though. I can just explain it to him. Rantaro is a fair guy. He'll understand. Kokichi just tuts in response and starts pacing around the room. Kind of you to vouch for someone nobody here trusts. But it won't work, Momoto-chan. Hamami-chan only believes his own deductions, and it won't mean anything coming from a person who most people can tell is head over heels. It's not... I wouldn't call it head over heels. No, Kokichi smirks, and Kaito continually thinks, not the time for this, to himself, even as Kokichi leans forward and giggles. That's fine for now, then. I love a good chase. Assuming you're able to last long enough to keep the game up, Momoto-chan. Kaito tries to will away the light pink on his cheeks and the tightness in his throat and chest, and weakly protests, Fuck off, man! Aw, what a shame, Kokichi cackles, and despite the forced fakeness of the grating laugh, Kaito still notices the genuine wonder and mirth in Kokichi's expression, and finds his heart floating up into his chest all over again. You're the one who started this game, though. You can't tell me to stop once I flirt back. I wasn't really flirting, though. Kaito drums his fingers on the table next to him. Certainly fooled me, then. Or maybe the only person you've convinced otherwise was yourself. You weren't terribly subtle, Momoto-chan. People could tell you had a soft spot for little old me. Kokichi accentuates his statement with a wink, and that turns the interaction from endearing to irritating for Kaito. Stop! You're not that attractive, he grunts, moving to cross his arms in front of his chest. You can't play that card. I'm not head over heels. Well, it's good then. You're not in too deep. Kokichi's tone shifts to cold, and he stops his pacing right in front of the fireplace and faces Kaito. The angle from the light shrouds his body in darkness, and the shadow at his feet seems impossibly long for how tall he actually is. Once Kaito's eyes adjust, he can make out the worried creases on Kokichi's face before they harden into contempt with the eye contact. It's the same as earlier. Be careful, Kaito. I'd rather you live. A warning. Huh. Kaito takes in Kokichi's harsh expression, and once again thinks about what's happened to Kokichi in the last few days. He understands. I know you want to help, Momoto-chan, Kokichi states, tone firm, unyielding. There's nothing you can do, though. There are no plans, no loopholes, no secret trump cards, even though I know you think I have them. There's nothing left. But I'll think of something else, is what Kaito hopes he's implying with the statement, daring to believe. He's not a quitter, and neither is Kokichi. So, Kokichi continues, although I'm flattered, Momoto-chan is going to have to pick another boy to chase, one that doesn't have a target on his back, you know? Because I'm not a fan of dragging other people into my mess unless I absolutely have to. Kaito understands this is a rejection, even considering all the lies that Kokichi spews. This particular speech was upfront and had weight to it, and it's more a matter of their situation than anything to do with them. So it doesn't sting, per se. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating to know that if they had been in a normal situation, in a normal high school, Kaito probably could have asked Kokichi out like normal, and gotten a yes. He would have said yes, and Kaede and Shuichi would have had the emotional room to be an actual couple, rather than whatever they were managing before. Miu and Kokichi would be able to bicker like friends instead of fearing each other's intelligence. Maki wouldn't feel like she had to kill someone again. Gonta wouldn't have to live with the knowledge that he killed somebody. He wishes they had all met somewhere other than here. Yeah, got it, is how he chooses to reply. It's not what he wanted, but he understands. It's all they could have here. Kokichi stares at him intently, before the mask falls away and he dissolves into giggles. Kaito glares at him, which only makes him laugh harder. You know, I was going to give you a big scary speech to get you to leave me alone, he hums once the laughter dies down. But I decided it'd be too mean, especially since Momoto-chan seems intent on believing I'm a good person. And you understand me either way, so there was no need. Yeah, whatever. He uncrosses his arms and decides to put his 2 cents in, even though it's out of his control. Just tell me if there's anything I can do. Sure, can do, Space Captain. Kaito rolls his eyes and turns to open the door to the hallway. You coming? No, but wait a sec.
Kokichi skips forward and throws himself onto Kaito, allowing their arms to link. Then, he pulls Kaito down so he can stand on his tiptoes and brush his lips against Kaito's cheek. Not quite a kiss, but hinting at one with the way Kaito can feel Kokichi's smile against his skin. "Stay safe, Kaito," he whispers, "and don't worry about that bloodbath. I know about that too." Kaito's eyes widen, and this time, when Kokichi lets go of his arm and bolts out of the room, he doesn't react fast enough to stop him. Shit, how did he know about that? Kaito feels the familiar pinprick of a cough in his throat and swallows it down. It's been getting harder to do that recently, and he really thought he'd been careful whenever... But maybe it's a special circumstance. Kokichi tends to have a way of knowing things he shouldn't. Kaito exhales slowly and steps out of the room, allowing the heavy wooden door to close behind him. The hallway is completely silent now, the footfalls of Kokichi's retreat long gone by now, and Kaito hopes he went back to his dorm so he could sleep. That's what Kaito should do too, but before he does, he holds his hand up to his cheek, right where Kokichi was before. Stay safe, huh? He wishes it were that simple. Still, he can try, and if Kokichi knows about whatever blood cough sickness he has right now, he trusts him to work with it. He trusts Kokichi to come up with something. If anyone can do it here, it's him. And maybe in the next life, in a world where neither of them have to worry about surviving the day, he can ask Kokichi out properly, and get a yes. And so, in the next life. After enough medical check-ins, explanations of VR technology, and past lives to make for the last one 10 times over, Kaito is finally allowed to enter the brightly lit visitor's room, with its high windows that lead out to a park of brilliantly colored fall trees. And there, standing at the far end of the room and chatting amicably with Kaede, is Kokichi. He hasn't noticed them yet. It's Kaede whose eyes widen first, taking in Kaito's growing smile and Shuichi's ecstatic expression. It's only once Shuichi barrels into Kaede that Kokichi turns around to meet his eyes. He looks softer than Kaito remembers, tucked in a sweater 2 sizes too big, and hair gently brushing his shoulders as he turns his head. He grins in recognition, a look that used to be all teeth and sharp edges, but now seems at ease in a way that Kaito's never seen before. "Momota-chan," Kokichi sings teasingly, knowing that Kaede and Shuichi are paying attention to each other and not them right now. "You kept me waiting, you know, being one of the last ones out. Did you have fun?" Kaito snorts. "Absolutely not." "Well," Kokichi hops forward, his loose sweater and hair bouncing along with the movement. And there's that not really new anymore urge to pull him close and make it so that nothing bad can ever happen to him again. "I get it. Who could have fun there, right? I got it to end as soon as possible, though, which was all I was able to salvage. You get that, right? Are you mad at me?" "Not really." Kaito grins, and is sure his own expression reflects the very same relief and comfort that Kokichi feels. More relieved than anything at this point. Was still an asshole move, though.
"The resident asshole? That's me,"
Kokichi cackles and leans forward conspiratorially, angling himself away from Kaede and Shuichi's tearful reunion.
"You know,"
he hums, tone turning sly,
"if Kaito were to ask me out now, he could probably get a yes. Only if he still wants to, though."
This time, Kaito doesn't get embarrassed. The grin on his face widens to the point that the tables turn, and Kokichi's expression slowly morphs into a frustrated scowl.
"That was supposed to annoy you," he pouts. "Remember when you got all embarrassed that one time? What changed since then, huh? You survive a killing game and nothing phases you anymore?"
"Could be." Kaito sends Kokichi a smug look, and decides that if this is what is flustering Kokichi, then 2 can play at this game. "I think it's just I'm happy to see you," Kaito says, and lets his voice drop and soften for the next bit. "You're the first person I thought of when they said everyone was alive. I'm so glad you're here."
"Boo!"
Kokichi sticks his tongue out at him in protest in true Kokichi fashion, but he can't seem to stop the bright smile that bubbles to the surface after the fact. They hold each other's gazes for what feels like a long time, but much too short all at once, until Kokichi breaks away first and darts past him towards the windows, a telltale sign of a blush just ghosting the tops of his cheeks. "So I'm not the only happy one after all." Kaito throws his head back and laughs.
"What? Happy? I'm only happy when I'm bathing in the blood of innocence or ordering the destruction of all robot kind. Well, and when I have this.
Kokichi holds something above his head and sharply grabs all of Kaito's attention. That's his wallet. Hey, they just gave that to me. Give it back.
No!
Kokichi flashes him a shit-eating grin that he'd never thought he'd see again, and it's enough to cause the brief flash of anger to dissipate. It readily resurfaces again, though, when Kokichi turns on his heel to run through the door and out into the trees. Kaito curses and gives chase, the brisk air washing over him as he exits the stuffiness of the facility. Both his and Kokichi's footsteps are loud atop the fallen leaves, and he can hear Kokichi cackling as he zigzags through various shades of maple. They play chase for a while. At some point, Kokichi jumps over a bench. Kaito almost trips over a tree branch. Some startled geese fly away, and Kaito forgets why he's chasing Kokichi in the first place, just reveling in the fact that Kokichi is here again. They aren't trapped in a school anymore, and each breath he's taking painlessly fills his lungs up to the brim. It's amazing. He still manages to get completely winded before Kokichi does, though, and he must notice because he slows and suddenly does an about-face to wrap his arms around Kaito and tuck his head into his chest. Both of their chests are heaving, and though it must not be terribly comfortable for Kokichi, he still presses further into Kaito and snuggles against him. Kaito lightly threads one of his hands through Kokichi's hair, noticing how well managed it is compared to the game, and places his other hand on Kokichi's back to pull him close. As their breathing evens out, Kaito closes his eyes and relishes in how different this is from that moment in the Ultimate Detective's lab where he had to watch Kokichi regain his own breathing, and those other times where he sat alone in his room trying to expel blood from his lungs. The emotional edge of those memories are faint thanks to Team Danganronpa's technology, but it's a stark difference to what's happening now that he knows he could push out a few tears if he tried. Kokichi lifts his head at last to meet Kaito's eyes, and his own are just as beautiful and perceptive and pristine as Kaito remembers them being. He also notes with excitement how the flush has grown on his cheeks to spread to the tip of his nose. A large part of it is definitely due to the chill outside and the running they just did, but that doesn't make him any less pretty because of it.
You didn't actually ask me out on a date before, so I took the initiative, Kokichi huffs playfully. And I couldn't take you out of here for robbery and running from the cops, so a chase through the park was the next best first date idea.
He's so pretty and intelligent and clever and so much more than that. Kaito wants to kiss him, and he tries to say it, but the words required are a little too embarrassing to get out right now. He places his hands on either side of Kokichi's head to frame his face, though, and as always, Kokichi can read him like an open book. His expression switches to cunning, and he leans up to encourage Kaito, who meets him halfway. When they separate, they still hold each other as close as they can, Kokichi's breath warm and still, oh so close to Kaito's lips. Kokichi is Kokichi, though, so faster than Kaito can blink, he reaches up to yank Kaito's nose and wiggle out of his grasp once he startles. What the hell?
See you soon, Kai-chan, for our next date.
He darts away and is gone, but unlike when he disappeared in the killing game, leaving a Kokichi-sized void in his wake, Kaito feels warm and fulfilled with the knowledge that there will be a next time. And that Kokichi kissed him. That too. The wind blows gently through the clearing, making the leaves rustle and fall from atop the trees. The sun is shining. His wallet is back in his pocket. Kaito can hear more geese and the distant chattering of people in the distance. And he thinks, this isn't a bad next life to wake up to. I can work with this. He tells Shuichi the same thing when they get back to their shared apartment they were provided with, and Shuichi pokes his head out from behind the vase of flowers, among other housewarming gifts, that Kaede gave him, and replies, stars shining in his eyes. Yes, I think so too.